Hello, boring dreamers. Today, we are going to get dressed. Not in our usual, comfortable pajamas, but in the single most iconic, and quite possibly most miserable outfit in all of history. A full suit of medieval armor. We're going to explore why the Shining Knight, that great symbol of romance and chivalry, was probably the most uncomfortable and vocally grumpy person on any given battlefield. Let's be honest, you're less a shining hero in this story, and more a walking can of very sweaty, very unhappy sardines, with a significantly higher chance of dying from heat stroke than from a dragon. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. As always, I'd love to see you post your location and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you feel is the cold. Not a gentle morning chill, but a deep, damp, and profoundly disrespectful cold that has seeped up from the stone floor through your thin straw mattress and has taken root in your very bones. You are a boy of 16, though your aching back feels closer to 60, and your name, for today, is Thomas. You are a squire, and your bedroom is a small, windowless alcove off the main hall of a drafty castle in the north of England. The year is 1385. You sit up, the rough, scratchy wool of your blanket a familiar torment against your skin. The air smells of wood smoke, of damp stone, and of the faint, ever-present, and deeply unglamorous aroma of horse. This is the smell of your life. Your job, your entire existence, is to serve your knight, a fearsome barrel-chested man named Sir John, a man whose moods are as predictable as the English weather and whose snoring sounds like a bear trying to swallow a bag of rocks. This is the second stage of your long, arduous, and very expensive journey to knighthood. You spent your childhood as a page, a glorified servant in a noble household, learning to ride, to serve at table, and to not speak unless spoken to. Now you are a squire, an apprentice warrior, a personal assistant to a killing machine. It's the medieval world's most dangerous internship. Your duties range from the noble, learning the art of the sword and lance, to the mundane, polishing Sir John's armor until you can see your own miserable, tired face in it, to the downright disgusting, mucking out his warhorse's stall. But today is not a normal day. It is not a day of polishing and mucking. Today is the day of the tournament. And today, for the first time, you will not just be helping Sir John into his armor. You will be wearing your own. It is not a new gleaming suit, of course. It is a hand-me-down, a battered, slightly rusty set of mail that has been worn by 3 squires before you, each one adding his own unique collection of dents, scratches, and sweat stains to its storied history. You are, of course, thrilled. This is the dream. Every bump, every sleepless night, every shouted command from Sir John has been for this. To finally wear the medal, to feel the weight of it, to be, for a single day, not just a servant, but a warrior in your own right. But underneath the thrill is a deep, cold, and very well-informed sense of dread. You have helped Sir John get dressed for battle 100 times. You have heard his grunts, his curses, his litany of complaints about the pinching, the chafing, the suffocating heat. You have seen him at the end of a long day, his face pale with exhaustion, his body covered in a road map of angry red welts and bruises where the armor has rubbed and bitten him. Historians still argue whether the relationship between a knight and his squire was more like that of a harsh but fair mentor and his apprentice, a path that almost always led to the squire's own knighthood, or if it was a more exploitative arrangement, a form of indentured servitude where the squire was little more than a cheap multi-purpose servant with a very low chance of promotion. Looking at the calluses on your hands and the permanent ache in your lower back, you're leaning towards the second theory. A quirky and telling tidbit about your job is that it isn't just about the armor. In a battle or a tournament, you are the knight's pit crew, his caddy, and his spare parts department responsible for keeping track of his extra lances, his backup shield, and even a spare, fully armored warhorse. It's a logistical nightmare, and if you get it wrong, the consequences are far worse than just an angry memo from HR. A great, booming roar echoes from the main hall. It is the sound of Sir John, awake and demanding his breakfast. Your moment of quiet contemplation is over. You scramble from your straw bed, your heart a frantic, fluttering bird in your chest, a mixture of pure, boyish excitement and a deep professional dread. The long, uncomfortable, and deeply unglamorous process of becoming a human can opener is about to begin. After a hasty and largely silent breakfast of black bread and weak ale, the great, clattering business of the day begins. You first must attend to Sir John, a process you know with the grim familiarity of 1,000 repetitions. It takes two of you, you and another, older squire, to wrestle your knight into his steel skin. You start with his padded leggings, the chausse, then the great, gleaming plates of his leg armor, the greaves and cuisses, strapping and buckling each piece with a practiced efficiency. Then comes the mail shirt, the breastplate, the arm pieces, and finally the great, heavy helmet. It is an hour-long, sweat-inducing process of lifting, strapping, and tying, and by the end of it, Sir John has been transformed from a large, grumpy man in his small clothes into a towering, terrifying creature of polished steel. He is magnificent. He is also already complaining about a strap that is digging into his armpit. And then it is your turn. The older squire, a cynical, lanky boy named William, gives you a look that is a mixture of pity and professional contempt. "Right then, Thomas," he says, his voice flat and devoid of any excitement. "Let's make a proper tin soldier out of you." He gestures not to the pile of slightly rusty chainmail, but to a lumpy, yellowish bundle of cloth on a nearby chest. This is the beginning of your suffering. Before a single ring of metal touches your body, you must be encased in a prison of padded linen. The first layer is your own thin linen undertunic and loose-fitting trousers, or brise. This is the only thing that will be directly touching your skin for the rest of the day, the last thin barrier of comfort before the misery begins. Over this, you pull on the padded leggings, thick, quilted chausse that run from your thigh to your ankle. They are stuffed with a lumpy, uneven mixture of raw wool and scrap cloth, and tying them on feels like you're wrapping your legs in a pair of thin, uncooperative duvets. But the true torment is the main garment, the gambeson. Or perhaps it's an acetone, or maybe an arming doublet. Historians still argue whether these terms referred to distinct, different garments or were simply regional, and chronological variations for the same basic thing, a thick, padded, and deeply uncomfortable jacket. William, who has all the historical nuance of a dropped rock, just calls it the oven. It is a hideous thing, a sleeveless knee-length jacket made of a coarse, yellowish linen, its surface covered in a neat, quilted grid of stitching that holds the lumpy stuffing in place. And that stuffing, you know, from having had to repair the seams on Sir John's own garment, is a fragrant and deeply unglamorous mixture of horsehair raw wool and whatever leftover scraps of cloth were lying around the tailor's floor. This is a quirky and rather itchy tidbit of medieval textile manufacturing. The padding for these garments was often a recycled hodgepodge of textile waste, making each one a unique, lumpy, and probably not hypoallergenic work of art. William holds it open for you, and you plunge your arms in. The immediate sensation is one of claustrophobic, suffocating warmth. The garment is heavy, far heavier than it looks, and it smells of dust, of old sweat from the 3 squires who wore it before you, and faintly of mothballs. It's a rich, historical aroma that you could really do without. And then the lacing begins. William starts at your waist, pulling the thick leather laces through a series of eyelets with a series of hard, vicious yanks. The gambeson is not meant to be worn. It is meant to be cinched. It is a full-body corset designed to be as tight as humanly possible, compressing your torso and restricting your every breath. It's like being hugged by a very large, very lumpy, and deeply unemotional python. This is the great, misunderstood genius of the gambeson, the mainstream historical fact that is so often overlooked. This padded prison is not just for comfort. It is a critical piece of the armor system. It is your shock absorber. When a sword or a mace strikes the mail, you'll wear over this. The gambeson is what prevents the force of the blow from simply breaking your bones and turning your internal organs into a smoothie. For a common foot soldier who could not afford mail, a thick gambeson like this was often his only armor, and it was surprisingly effective at stopping cuts and absorbing blows. But that knowledge is cold comfort right now. You are encased, a human sausage in a thick, lumpy, and already unpleasantly warm casing. You try to take a deep breath, and you can't. You try to bend at the waist, and the stiff, unforgiving garment resists, digging into your hips. You are a walking, breathing, and profoundly miserable mattress. And the worst part? You haven't even put the actual armor on yet. This is just the underwear. William, the older squire, allows you a moment to stew in your padded, quilted prison, an expression of grim satisfaction on his face. He's been through this, and now it's your turn. It is the medieval equivalent of an older sibling watching you eat a lemon for the first time. Feeling brave yet, Thomas? He asks, his voice dry as dust. Good. Now for the noisy part. He turns not to a polished stand, but to a simple wooden chest, from which he and the other squire lift your next layer of torment. It is a great, glistening, and deeply unromantic pile of metal. It is not the shiny, neatly tailored shirt you see in the stained glass windows of the chapel. It is a heavy, oily, and slightly rusty heap of interlocking iron rings that slumps and pools on the floor like a dead metallic jellyfish. This is a hauberk, a long-sleeved, knee-length shirt of chainmail, and it is your primary defense against a world of sharp, pointy things. Head through, William grunts, and the 2 of them hold the shapeless garment up, creating a wide opening at the collar. You bend over and plunge your head into the dark, cold, and greasy hole. For a moment, you are blind, the world a mess of clinking metal and the smell of oil and old iron. And then it falls. The sensation is not a gentle settling. It is a sudden, brutal, and shocking imposition of weight. A good 40 pounds of dead, unyielding iron, and all of it, every single ounce, is hanging directly from your shoulders. It is a crushing, suffocating burden, a feeling like the world has just decided to increase its gravity, but only for you. It's less a piece of clothing and more a personal, portable anvil that you wear as a shirt. You stagger, your knees buckling slightly under the new, incredible load. Your padded gambeson, which a moment ago felt like a suffocating prison, now feels like the only thing keeping your collarbones from being ground into dust. This is the first and most profound complaint of the mail wearer. The weight is all in the wrong place. The mainstream historical fact is that a hauberk's entire weight hung from the shoulders, putting immense strain on the wearer's neck, back, and clavicles, and severely restricting their movement and stamina. The process isn't over. Next come the mail chausses, leggings of the same interlocking rings, which are pulled up over your padded leg coverings and tied with leather points to a belt around your waist. Then, a separate mail coif is pulled over your head, a hood of metal that covers your neck, chin, and scalp, leaving only your face exposed. It adds another 10 pounds of weight, all of it pulling down on your head, and it makes you look like a sad, metallic tea cozy. The mail itself is a masterpiece of patient, laborious craftsmanship. A quirky and fascinating tidbit is that a single hauberk, like yours, could be composed of anywhere from 30,000 to over 50,000 individual rings. And these are not simple, butted-together rings like you might see on a cheap modern replica. Each ring in your high-quality hauberk is riveted shut, a tiny, painstaking process that involved flattening the ends of the ring, punching a hole, and hammering a tiny rivet in place. The sheer man-hours required to create one shirt were astronomical, which is why this battered, hand-me-down suit is still one of the most valuable things you have ever touched. You are now fully encased, a shuffling, clanking column of misery. But William is not finished. He produces the single most important invention in the history of wearing heavy metal t-shirts, a thick leather belt. He wraps it around your waist, over the mail, and pulls it brutally tight, cinching the loose, shapeless hauberk against your body. And a miracle happens. A significant portion of the hauberk's crushing weight is lifted from your shoulders and transferred to your hips, which are far better equipped to handle it. The relief is immediate and profound. This belt is not a fashion accessory. It is a critical piece of load-bearing equipment, the medieval equivalent of a high-tech hiking backpack's hip strap. You take a few tentative steps. You are still carrying a small person's worth of extra weight, but you can move. You can breathe, sort of. You can even, with a bit of effort, raise your arms. Historians and experimental archaeologists still argue whether a properly fitted and belted suit of mail was truly as debilitating as popular imagination suggests. Modern reconstructions have shown that a well-made suit allows for a surprising range of motion. You can run, you can jump, you can even do a clumsy cartwheel if you're feeling particularly foolish. But for you, a boy who has spent his life in simple wool and linen, the sensation is one of profound, leaden oppression. You feel less like a warrior and more like a church bell with legs. The tournament hasn't even started, and you are already exhausted and deeply, profoundly uncomfortable. William, your squire in arms and tormentor in chief, gives the tight leather belt a final vicious tug. There, he says, with the satisfaction of a man who has just finished packing a particularly difficult suitcase. Now you're ready to be properly miserable. He gives you a shove towards the door of the armory. Go on, then. Walk around. Get a feel for your new skin before Sir John wants his horse. You take your first few steps out of the dim, familiar armory and into the bright, chaotic bustle of the castle courtyard. The world, which just this morning was your workplace, has been transformed. It is a riot of color and noise, a great, swirling pageant of last-minute tournament preparations. Banners flap from the castle walls, ladies in their finest silks watch from the battlements, and the courtyard is a traffic jam of other knights and squires, all clanking and shouting. It's like the backstage area of a very loud, very dangerous, and very poorly organized rock festival. But you are not focused on the spectacle. You are focused on a new and deeply intimate form of suffering that is just beginning to make itself known. With every single step, 1,000 tiny points of friction are igniting all over your body. It is the agony of chafing. Your padded gambeson, which felt so restrictive on its own, is now a crucial, if deeply flawed, barrier between your soft, human skin and the 40 pounds of abrasive, rivet-studded iron that you are wearing. And the barrier is failing. It starts in your armpits. As you walk, your arms swinging in an unnatural, constricted arc, the mail under your arms bunches and grinds. The thousands of tiny, riveted rings, which are so effective at stopping a sword cut, are also a perfect industrial-grade cheese grater. They are not rubbing against your skin, not yet, but they are grinding against the thick, quilted linen of your gambeson, a constant, rasping friction that you can feel deep in your bones. With every step, a hot, angry pressure begins to build in your most sensitive and most sweat-prone areas. Then you notice it in your elbows and the backs of your knees. As you bend your limbs, the mail does not stretch and flex like cloth. It constricts, tightening and pinching the padded garment beneath, creating a tourniquet of misery. You can feel the lumpy, horsehair stuffing of your gambeson being compressed, squeezed, and ground into your joints by the unforgiving metal. It's a full-body, deep tissue massage being administered by a very large and very angry metal hedgehog. This is the mainstream historical fact that is so often lost in the romance of the Shining Knight. Armor was not just heavy. It was a torture device of 1,000 tiny, grinding torments. Contemporary accounts and even fictional romances are filled with knights complaining about the pain and discomfort of their equipment. They weren't just being dramatic. You try to adjust, to find a way of walking that minimizes the friction. You adopt a strange, stiff-legged, open-armed waddle, a gait that makes you look like a penguin who has had a very, very bad day. This only makes William laugh, a short, sharp bark of pure, cynical amusement. You'll get used to it, he calls after you. Or you won't. The sores are the worst part. They fester. You walk past a blacksmith's forge, where a smith is making some last-minute repairs to a knight's helmet. A quirky and rather disgusting tidbit of armor maintenance was the constant and losing battle against the accumulated sweat, grime, and dead skin that would build up in the padded linings. These garments were rarely, if ever, properly washed, and they became breeding grounds for bacteria, leading to a whole host of deeply unpleasant skin conditions, sores, and infections. The greatest enemy of the knight was not the dragon, but the simple, humble bacterium. Historians and reenactors still argue how much of this chafing and discomfort was due to a poor fit. Would a custom-made suit of mail, tailored to the individual wearer by a master armorer, have been significantly more comfortable than your battered, hand-me-down suit? Or was a certain level of grinding, chafing misery simply an inherent, unavoidable feature of wearing a heavy, metal-ringed onesie? As you feel a particularly sharp pinching sensation in your groin, you suspect that even the most expensive suit of mail in the world would not feel like a set of silk pajamas. You stop and lean against a stone wall, the cool, solid stone a momentary relief against your aching back. You have been wearing your new skin for less than 20 minutes, and you are already in a state of low-grade, full-body agony. The thrill of the dream, the boyish excitement of finally wearing the armor, has completely evaporated, replaced by a hot, itchy, and deeply uncomfortable reality. The tournament hasn't even begun, and you are already losing your first, and most personal, battle. The battle of you versus a very, very angry shirt. You peel yourself away from the cool, solid comfort of the stone wall, a small, temporary island of relief in an ocean of grinding, chafing misery. The decision to move again is not a choice, but a necessity. William, the senior squire, is gesturing impatiently from across the courtyard. It is time to see to the horses, the real superstars of this whole violent pageant. As you push off the wall, a new and deeply unwelcome dimension of your suffering announces itself not to your skin, but to your ears. It is the noise, the sheer, unholy, and unforgivably loud jangle of it all. The movement, a simple act of straightening your posture, unleashes a cascade of sound. It's a complex, multi-layered, and deeply metallic symphony. There is the low, bass note whoosh of the thousands of rings shifting and settling against each other. There is the higher-pitched, chaotic clinking and tinkling of individual rings striking their neighbors. And there is the sharp, percussive scrape as the mail on your legs brushes against the mail on your arms. It is the sound of a very large bag of cutlery being dropped down a flight of stone stairs, and you are inside it. You take a step. The sound explodes again, a fresh wave of metallic chatter that seems to radiate from your very bones. You feel, with a sudden hot wave of self-consciousness, that every single person in the bustling, noisy courtyard has turned to look at you, the walking, talking wind chime. You have become a one-man percussion section, and the only instrument you can play is 1,000 tiny bells announcing my every awkward move. This is your next great lesson in the profound discomfort of being a knight, the betrayal of sound. You are supposed to be a warrior, a creature of potential menace and tactical advantage. But any hope of stealth, of surprise, of a quiet, dignified approach has just been utterly, completely, and laughably obliterated. You couldn't sneak up on a man who is profoundly deaf and facing the other way. You are a walking burglar alarm, and the only thing you are protecting is everyone else's awareness of your exact location. This is the mainstream historical fact that is so at odds with the modern image of the silent, skulking ninja knight. Male armor was notoriously and dangerously loud. For a scout trying to reconnoiter an enemy position, or a raiding party attempting a surprise night attack, this constant, betraying jangle was a catastrophic liability. The enemy would hear you coming from a quarter-mile away, giving them ample time to wake up, have a small breakfast, and prepare a suitably unpleasant welcome for you. You try to move quietly, a hopeless experiment in noise reduction. You slow your pace. You try to walk with a fluid gliding motion, but it's useless. Every tiny involuntary shift of your weight, every breath that moves your chest, produces a soft but undeniable metallic whisper. It's the armor's dirty little secret. It's always listening, and it's a terrible gossip. Historians and military tacticians still argue how often knights, as the elite heavy shock cavalry of their day, were truly expected to perform tasks requiring stealth. Was their primary role always to be the loud, terrifying, and very visible hammer in a pitched battle, their noise a part of their psychological impact? Or were they also expected to be versatile soldiers, capable of quiet scouting and surprise ambushes, a task for which their primary equipment was so spectacularly ill-suited? You see an older, more experienced knight walking across the courtyard, his movements practiced and economical. His mail is still noisy, but it is a softer, more subdued sound than your own cacophony. A quirky and rather practical tidbit of armor maintenance involved attempts to muffle the sound. Some chronicles mention knights wearing their mail under a tight-fitting leather or cloth surcoat, not just for identification, but to dampen the jangle. For long marches, mail was sometimes rolled up in heavy cloth or even packed in straw-filled barrels, to keep it quiet on the road. The very existence of these desperate, clumsy solutions is a testament to the severity of the problem. It is the medieval equivalent of wrapping your phone in a pillow because you can't figure out how to turn off the ringer. You finally reach William, your arrival having been announced to the entire castle, a good 30 seconds before you actually get there. He just shakes his head. "Subtle as a church bell, Thomas," he says, his voice dripping with his usual brand of cheerful contempt. He hands you a heavy leather bucket and a brush. It's time to groom Sir John's warhorse, a beast that is likely to be far more comfortable in its own skin than you are in yours. You turn to the stables, your every step a loud, clanking, and deeply unheroic advertisement of your own profound, grinding misery. The stables are a haven of familiar smells and relative quiet. The chaotic, jangling noise of the courtyard is muted here, replaced by the soft shuffling of horses in their stalls, the rustle of straw, and the warm, earthy, and profoundly comforting smell of the animals themselves. For a moment, as you begin the rhythmic, methodical work of brushing down Sir John's great warhorse, a magnificent beast named Mauler, you almost forget the metal prison you are wearing. The cool, shadowy interior of the stable is a temporary reprieve. But the reprieve, like all good things in your life, is destined to be short-lived. "Thomas, get a move on. The lists are opening." It is William's voice, sharp and impatient, cutting through the peaceful gloom. You give Mauler a final apologetic pat and turn to leave the stables, stepping out of the shadows and back into the full, unapologetic glare of the late morning sun. A change is instantaneous and brutal. It is like stepping from a cool cellar directly into a baker's oven. The sun, which was merely bright before, is now a physical weight, a blast of heat that strikes the metal of your mail shirt. And the metal, a perfect conductor, does what metal does best. It gets hot instantly. You can feel the warmth not on your skin, but in the very air around your torso, a pocket of trapped, superheating atmosphere. It's a bit like wearing a personal greenhouse, if the only thing you were trying to grow was a profound sense of misery. But the real problem is not the mail. It is the oven beneath the oven, the gambeson, that thick, lumpy, horsehair-stuffed jacket, which was so essential for absorbing the shock of a blow, is also a world-class insulator. It is, in effect, a custom-fitted full-body winter coat. And you are wearing it on a sunny summer day, under a layer of heat-conducting iron. The sweat begins immediately. It is not a gentle, cooling perspiration. It is a sudden, panicked deluge, your body's emergency cooling system turning on all at once and immediately discovering that it is a closed loop. The sweat has nowhere to go. It cannot evaporate through the thick, quilted linen. It cannot escape through the dense, interlocking web of iron rings. It simply stays. The padded gambeson, your supposed protector, has betrayed you. It is no longer a lumpy, uncomfortable jacket. It is now a lumpy, uncomfortable, and fully saturated sponge. You can feel the cold, clammy fabric clinging to your skin, the horsehair stuffing turning into a warm, wet, and deeply unpleasant poultice. With every movement, you can hear a faint, disgusting, squelching sound, a new and unwelcome addition to the constant metallic jangle of your armor. Remember that embarrassing jangle? It now has a baseline provided by your own personal swamp. This is the mainstream historical fact that turned so many medieval battles, particularly those fought in the summer or in hot climates like the Holy Land, into deadly endurance contests. Heat stroke was a far more common and indiscriminate killer than any sword or arrow. Knights in full armor could lose several liters of sweat in a single hour of combat, leading to rapid dehydration, exhaustion, and, in many cases, a fatal collapse inside their own personal steel-lined sauna. You stand in the courtyard, waiting for Sir John to mount his horse, and you can feel yourself slowly, inexorably, cooking. Historians and modern armorers still argue how much the addition of a linen surcoat, the colorful tunic worn over the mail, actually helped. Did it provide a significant layer of shade, reflecting the sun's rays and keeping the metal cooler? Or was it a largely decorative item that in the heat of battle simply became another wet, suffocating layer in a multi-layered system of misery? A quirky and rather desperate tidbit from some historical accounts suggests that knights would sometimes try to pre-soak their padded undergarments in cool water before a battle. The idea was that the slow evaporation would provide a cooling effect. The reality, as anyone who has ever tried to wear a wet towel under a winter coat can attest, was probably a few brief, glorious moments of coolness followed by a long, miserable afternoon of being steamed alive in your own clothes, a human dumpling of chivalry. You are no longer a squire. You are a walking, talking, and profoundly unhappy science experiment in thermodynamics. The sun's energy is being trapped by the mail. The heat is being held in by the gambeson, and you are the soft, juicy, and slowly braising ingredient in the middle. The tournament has not even begun. The first lance has not been splintered, and you are already in a state of physical distress that borders on a medical emergency. You look up at the bright, cheerful sun, and you find yourself wishing for a nice, cool, overcast English drizzle. For a knight in armor, a sunny day is not a blessing. It is a curse. You are a walking swamp, a mobile sweat lodge, a human-shaped vessel of slowly simmering misery. The sun continues its relentless assault, and the heat trapped inside your personal wearable oven has reached a new level of creative cruelty. But your body, a marvelous and deeply inconvenient machine, has decided that heat stroke is not a sufficiently interesting problem on its own. It has decided to introduce a new and far more urgent logistical crisis. It is the ale you had for breakfast and the sheer sweat-inducing stress of the morning. You need the privy, and you need it now. This is not a simple matter. This is a full-blown, five-alarm engineering emergency. In your normal, comfortable civilian clothes, this would be a trivial 30-second affair. But you are not in your normal clothes. You are encased in a complex, multi-layered, and stubbornly interconnected system of padded linen, riveted iron, and a half-dozen leather belts and straps. There is no zipper. There is no quick-release hatch. There is no conveniently located flap. The designers of your military hardware, in their single-minded focus on preventing you from being perforated by a sword, seem to have completely overlooked the far more frequent and predictable threat of a full bladder. A cold, greasy wave of panic, a sensation completely unrelated to the heat, washes over you. You look around the chaotic, bustling courtyard. There are hundreds of people here. Knights, squires, ladies, servants, merchants. There is, to put it mildly, a profound and terrifying lack of privacy. You spot William across the yard, and you begin the slow, clanking, and deeply humiliating waddle of desperation in his direction. He sees you coming, an expression of dawning, cynical comprehension spreading across his face. He knows that walk. He's seen it on Sir John a dozen times. He just sighs, a long-suffering sound of a man who knows he is about to perform a task that is far, far below his desired pay grade. "Oh, by the saints, Thomas," he says as you arrive. "Already? We haven't even started yet." He leads you not to the main castle latrine, the garderobe, which is little more than a stone seat with a hole in it overhanging the moat, but to a quiet, relatively secluded corner behind the stables. It is here that the true, unglamorous horror of your situation becomes clear. This is not a solo mission. "Right then," William says, with the grim professional air of a bomb disposal expert. "Let's diffuse this situation." The process is a slow, frantic, and deeply undignified reverse engineering of the morning's work. First, the main belt, the one that so miraculously transferred the weight of the hauberk to your hips, must come off. With a grunt, William unbuckles it, and the full, crushing 40 pounds of the mail shirt once again slams down onto your shoulders, driving a pained gasp from your lungs. Next come the mail chausse, the metal leggings. These are tied with a series of leather points to your arming belt, the one worn directly over your padded gambeson. William has to fumble under the heavy, clanking skirt of your hauberk, his hands searching blindly for the knots you tied just an hour ago. It is an intimate, awkward, and profoundly unheroic process. It's like trying to untie a shoelace in the dark, with a metal curtain in the way, while the person whose shoelace it is looks like they're about to explode. This is the mainstream historical fact of the matter. Armor was not a single cohesive suit, but a system of layers, each one tied, buckled, or strapped to the one beneath it. To get to the base layer, you had to deconstruct the entire complicated edifice. Finally, William gets the mail leggings untied, and they slump into a heavy, metallic puddle around your ankles. But you are not done. You still have the padded chausse, which are tied to a separate belt, and under that, your simple linen brise, your medieval underwear, which are held up by yet another belt. Historians and reenactors still argue about whether some later, more sophisticated forms of armor, particularly the full plate of the 15th century, offered a slightly more user-friendly solution to this problem, perhaps with more easily detachable leg sections. But for you, in your 14th century mail, it is a logistical nightmare. A quirky and rather revealing tidbit from medieval literature comes from the great German romance Parsifal, in which the hero, unused to his new armor, has a rather comical and deeply relatable moment of panic when he realizes he cannot, for the life of him, figure out how to get out of it to relieve himself. This wasn't just a problem. It was a well-known, universally understood, and apparently sometimes even funny aspect of a knight's life. After what feels like an eternity of frantic, sweaty fumbling, you are free. The relief is a glorious, almost religious experience, but it is fleeting, because you now have to put it all back together. The entire, miserable, multi-layered process, but in reverse. William, with a look of profound, world-weary resignation, begins the slow, arduous process of lacing you back into your metal prison. You stand there, a strange, half-armored creature, your dignity in a puddle around your ankles along with your mail leggings, and you have a single, clear, and deeply heretical thought. The man who invents a simple, effective, and discreetly located flap for a pair of armored trousers will be a greater hero than any knight who ever lived. The years have been both kind and cruel. The gawky 16-year-old squire named Thomas is a ghost, a half-forgotten memory of a boy who once fell on his face in the dust. You are a man now, in your late 30s, and you are Sir Thomas, a knight in your own right, your face lined with the memory of a dozen real battles and 100 tournaments. You have survived, and in that time the very skin of war has changed. The old, noisy, and deeply personal misery of chainmail has fallen out of fashion, replaced by a new, silent, and far more expensive kind of suffering. You are not in a drafty English castle. You are in a master armorer's workshop in the great city of Milan, a Silicon Valley of 15th century arms and armor. The air here does not smell of horse and damp stone, but of hot metal, quenching oil, and the sharp, clean scent of the polishing wheel. The suit of mail you once wore is a relic, something a common foot soldier might wear. You are here for an upgrade. You are being fitted for the latest, most fashionable, and most expensive way to get cooked alive. A full harness of articulated steel plate. The armor is not in a heap in a chest. It is laid out in pieces on a long velvet-covered table, a beautiful and terrifyingly complex anatomical puzzle. It is not a shirt. It is an exoskeleton. There are the greaves for your shins, the pull-ins for your knees, the cuisses for your thighs, the vambraces and rear braces for your arms, the pauldrons for your shoulders, the intricate, articulated gauntlets for your hands. And at the center of it all, the great, gleaming, sculpted breastplate and its corresponding backplate. It is the work of a master craftsman who is a combination of a blacksmith, a tailor, and a very judgmental sculptor. The process of getting dressed is no longer a simple, if heavy, matter of pulling a shirt over your head. It is an engineering project, and it requires a team. You stand in your small clothes as your new squire, a nervous but competent boy named Henry, begins the process. First comes the arming doublet, the descendant of the old gambeson. It is a more tailored, sophisticated garment, made of layers of linen and leather, but its purpose is the same, to provide a padded, shock-absorbing layer. And crucially, it is covered in dozens of arming points, little leather laces used to tie the various pieces of your steel shell directly to your body. Henry begins with your legs, strapping and buckling the greaves and cuisses on, then tying them to the points on your doublet. Each piece is a perfect, sculpted mirror of your own anatomy. Then comes the great, clamshell-like torso, the breastplate and backplate, locked together at the side with hinges and straps. It clunks into place with a sound of profound finality. You are no longer a man wearing a heavy shirt. You are a man inside a steel box. The arm pieces are next, each one a complex system of overlapping plates, or lames, connected by sliding rivets and internal leather straps, allowing you to actually bend your elbows. A full harness like this, a quirky and fascinating tidbit, could be composed of over 200 individual plates, each one shaped, fitted, and connected to its neighbors. Then comes the great revelation. As the final piece, the heavy steel gorget that protects your throat is buckled into place. You feel the weight. It is immense, a good 60 pounds of solid steel. But it is a different kind of weight. This is the mainstream historical fact that shatters the popular myth of the clumsy, crane-hoisted knight. A well-made suit of plate armor distributed its weight with a genius that your old mail hauberk could only dream of. The weight is not just on your shoulders. It is on your hips, your waist, your legs. You are not carrying it. You are wearing it. You can walk. You can bend your knees. You can even, with a bit of a grunt, sit down. Historians and experimental archaeologists still argue about the true weight and encumbrance of plate armor. The popular image of a 150-pound suit that required a crane to lift the knight onto his horse is a myth, born of later, much heavier tournament armor. A typical suit of battle armor like yours weighed between 45 and 65 pounds, less than the gear carried by a modern infantry soldier. But it was still a huge energy-sapping burden, and you have simply traded one set of miseries for another. The constant, grinding chafe of the mail is gone, replaced by a rigid, unyielding constriction. You are no longer being grated by 1,000 tiny rings. You are being gently but firmly squeezed by a full-body steel coffin. The loud, betraying jangle is gone, replaced by a series of soft, expensive-sounding squeaks and clicks from the articulated joints. And the heat. The heat is a new and far more personal kind of hell. The mail, for all its faults, could breathe. The plate cannot. You are now a hermetically sealed can of night, and the moment you step into the sun, the cooking process will begin in earnest. You are a gleaming, steel-plated statue, a masterpiece of the armorer's art, a testament to the genius of your age. And you are already profoundly and silently uncomfortable. You are a statue of polished Milanese steel, a testament to the high art of the armorer. You can move, yes, in a way that would have been a miracle in your old, clanking suit of mail. But the initial novelty of your newfound articulation is beginning to wear off, replaced by the simple, undeniable fact that you are wearing a 60-pound, form-fitting, and completely unventilated metal suit. The master armorer, a small, wiry man named Giovanni, with hands as tough as boiled leather and a fearsome, bristling mustache, circles you like a sculptor admiring his finished masterpiece. He taps your breastplate with a single calloused knuckle, producing a satisfying, high-pitched ping. Perfetto, he says, his voice a low, gravelly rumble of pure, professional satisfaction. It fits like a glove. A very expensive, very heavy, and very uncomfortable glove, but a glove nonetheless. He gives you a smile that is all business. And now, Sir Thomas, we must discuss the matter of my bill. He leads you over to a heavy oak table, upon which his apprentice has just laid out a small, unassuming piece of parchment. It is your invoice. You pick it up, your new articulated steel gauntlets, making the simple act of grasping the paper a clumsy, clicking affair. You look at the number written at the bottom, a figure in Florentine Florence, and you feel a new kind of suffocation, a tightness in your chest that has nothing to do with the straps of your breastplate. It is the simple, profound, and heart-stopping terror of a man who has just realized he may have made a catastrophic financial error. The number on the page is not just a price. It is a fortune. This single suit of armor, this beautiful steel skin you are wearing, costs more than the entire village that you are sworn to protect will generate in a year. It is the price of a substantial farm, complete with a mill and a flock of sheep. It is the lifetime wages of a master stonemason. It is, to put it in terms you can truly appreciate, the price of 20 prime war horses. You are no longer just wearing armor. You are wearing a mobile real estate investment, and the market is currently being tested by men with very large axes. It is a bit like buying a Lamborghini and immediately having to drive it in a demolition derby. This is the mainstream historical fact that is the great barrier to entry for your profession. Knighthood was a fantastically, almost ludicrously, expensive business. The armor, the horses, the weapons, the servants, it was a financial commitment on par with funding a modern-day small business, and the primary business was violence. It is the finest Milanese steel, of course, Giovanni says, sensing your sudden, wallet-induced panic, not the cheap German plate they are making for the common men-at-arms. That is munitions grade, good for stopping a clumsy spear thrust, perhaps. But this, he pats your shoulder pauldron with a proprietary air. This is a work of art. Every plate is hammered to a precise thickness, thicker over the heart, thinner in the back, perfectly balanced. It is a second skin, not a bucket. This quirky tidbit of armor manufacturing, the existence of different quality grades, from the mass-produced munition harnesses to the bespoke, high-fashion suits made by celebrity armorers like him, is a testament to the fact that your armor is as much a status symbol as it is a piece of protective equipment. You look at the bill again, a number with a genuinely offensive number of zeros. And the great question forms in your mind, the question historians still argue about. How, in God's name, did men like you actually pay for this? You certainly don't have a pile of florins this high, sitting in a chest back at your drafty castle. Did you take a massive loan from a Florentine banker, effectively mortgaging your own life and lands? Is this suit a gift from your feudal lord, a piece of essential military hardware for which he has footed the bill? Or, and this is the most likely and most stressful option, are you expected to pay for it with the future profits of your profession, the ransom of other, equally well-armored knights you hope to capture in the next war? We can, of course, arrange a payment plan, Giovanni says, his voice now the smooth, reassuring purr of a man who has had this conversation many, many times. A small deposit now, and the rest to be paid from the spoils of your next campaign. A standard arrangement. You nod dumbly, your mind still reeling. The weight of the armor on your shoulders has suddenly been doubled by the weight of the debt you have just incurred. You are not just a warrior. You are now a walking, talking, and profoundly leveraged financial asset. You look at your reflection in a polished shield hanging on the wall, a gleaming, faceless, and impossibly expensive steel monster. And you have a single clear thought. For this kind of money, it had better come with a very, very good warranty against dents. The master armorer, Giovanni, seems untroubled by the look of profound financial terror on your face. Debt, in his world, is simply a standard business practice, a necessary lubricant for the great, clanking machine of war. He gives your gleaming breastplate one final proprietary pat. "It is a fine suit, Sir Thomas," he says. "But a man is not a tortoise. You cannot walk around with your head sticking out." He nods to your squire, Henry, who has been standing by with a quiet, nervous reverence, holding the final, and most important, piece of your new steel skin, the helmet. It is a thing of both beautiful and terrifying simplicity. It is a bassinet, a high, gracefully curved helmet that covers your entire head and neck. But its most prominent feature is the detachable visor. This is the latest innovation. A hinged faceplate that can be lifted for a breath of air or locked down for the grim business of combat. This particular visor is a masterpiece of intimidating design. It is not a flat plate, but a projecting, conical snout, pierced with a series of small ventilation holes. The armorer calls it a houndskull, a dog-faced bassinet. The theory is that the pointed beak-like shape will help deflect a lance point or a sword cut away from your face. The practical effect is that it makes you look like a deeply malevolent and very shiny metal anteater. Henry approaches, holding the great helm with both hands as if it were a holy relic. "My lord," he says, his voice a nervous squeak. You give a short, resigned nod. You lower your head, and he gently, carefully, places the helmet over you. The world ends. It does not fade. It is instantly, brutally extinguished. One moment you are in a bright, noisy Italian workshop. The next, you are at the bottom of a dark, silent, and very small metal well. The helmet settles onto the padded collar of your arming doublet, and the steel gorget around your neck with a deep, final, and profoundly claustrophobic thump. And then Henry reaches up and lowers the visor. It locks into place with a sharp metallic click that sounds like a jail cell door being bolted shut from the outside. You are now in a prison for the senses. First, your vision. It is gone, all of it, except for a single, tiny, horizontal sliver of reality, that is the eye slit, the sight, cut into the visor. You have gone from a world of three-dimensional, panoramic vision to a world that is a flat, two-dimensional strip. You have no peripheral vision. You have no up. You have no down. You have only a narrow, letterbox-shaped window onto a world that you can no longer properly inhabit. It's like watching the world on a very short, but very widescreen television, and the only channel available is a first-person view of your own impending doom. This is the mainstream historical fact and the great, terrible trade-off of plate armor. In your quest for total protection, you have sacrificed your single most important tactical asset, situational awareness. Then your hearing. It is also gone. The loud, clanging, and vibrant sounds of the workshop, the blacksmith's hammer, the chatter of the apprentices have been transformed into a distant, muffled, and completely indistinct underwater rumble. But the silence is immediately filled by a new and far more intimate symphony of noise. The sound of your own breathing is a roaring oceanic windstorm inside the enclosed space. You can hear the soft, squelching beat of your own heart, a panicked drum in your ears. You can hear the faint, high-pitched creak of the leather lining every time you try to turn your head. You have a front-row seat to the internal symphony of your own anxiety, and the acoustics are fantastic. And finally, the air itself. The visor is pierced with a pattern of small holes, the breaths, but they are not enough. In the space of 2 breaths, the cool air inside the helmet is gone, replaced by the hot, humid, and recycled air from your own lungs. Condensation is already beginning to fog the inside of your visor, blurring your already pathetic little sliver of vision. The only thing you can smell is the faint, oily scent of the polished steel, the musty odor of the leather lining, and the rapidly concentrating aroma of your own fear. You are in a personal terrarium of your own exhalations. Historians and military analysts still argue whether the incredible protection offered by these visored helms was worth the catastrophic loss of sensory information and the psychological isolation they imposed on the wearer. This quirky and terrifying tidbit of the Houndskull design is that its intimidating, animalistic appearance was part of its function. It was a tool of psychological warfare, a way to dehumanize the wearer and present the enemy with a terrifying, monstrous, and completely unreadable face of steel. You are no longer Sir Thomas. You are the dog-faced man. You are a monster. And you are a monster who is half-blind, half-deaf, and on the verge of passing out from the heat. You try to turn your head to look at Giovanni, a slow, creaking, and profoundly difficult movement. He is just a muffled, blurry shape in your tiny window. You hear his distant, rumbling voice. "Magnifico," he says. "Magnificent. You have never felt less so in your entire life." The world is a narrow, blurry, and profoundly sweaty letterbox. You stand in the Milanese workshop, a magnificent, dog-faced monster of steel, while your squire Henry makes the final adjustments, his nervous fussing a distant, muffled scratching on the outside of your personal metal prison. Master Giovanni, the armorer, gives your gleaming shoulder pauldron a final, approving thwack, a sound that resonates through your body like the tolling of a great and very close bronze bell. The fitting is complete. Now comes the test. You are led, with the slow, careful, and slightly clicking gait of a newly assembled machine, out of the workshop and into a dusty training yard behind the armory. Here, your new warhorse, a beast even larger and more intimidating than old Mauler, is waiting. Getting onto its back is your first new and deeply unglamorous challenge. You can no longer just swing your leg over the saddle. The rigid steel plates of your leg armor make such a casual movement impossible. Instead, you place your steel-clad foot into the waiting, cupped hands of your squire, and with a great, coordinated heave from him and a grunt of pure physical effort from you, you are unceremoniously hoisted into the saddle. It is less a graceful act of horsemanship and more a clumsy, two-man engineering project. But once you are in the saddle, something miraculous happens. The weight, which was a constant 60-pound burden on the ground, seems to vanish, transferred from your own aching legs to the powerful back of the horse. The high war saddle locks you into place, and you are no longer a man in a suit of armor. You are the upper and most dangerous, half of a centaur made of flesh, bone, and steel. You take the reins, your articulated, metal-fingered gauntlets, a strange and clumsy interface, and you urge the horse into a gentle trot. The experience is profoundly strange. The constant, noisy jangle of your old mail is gone, replaced by the soft, expensive-sounding squeak of 1,000 well-oiled joints. But the sensory deprivation of your helmet is a terrifying new reality. Your vision is a tiny, bouncing sliver of the world, and the sound of the horse's hooves is a distant, muffled drumbeat. You are piloting your body from a dark, cramped, and very poorly ventilated control room. You make a few passes of the yard, the horse's powerful movements a smooth, rolling rhythm beneath you. A surge of pure, unadulterated power, a feeling you haven't had since the day you first put on that old, rusty mail, floods through you. This is it. This is the dream. You are a living thunderbolt, a perfect fusion of man, horse, and steel. You are invincible. And it is in this exact moment of supreme, arrogant confidence that gravity, that oldest and most democratic of foes, decides to teach you a lesson in humility. The horse shies. A stable cat, a small ginger flash of feline indifference, darts across the yard, and the great warhorse, a creature bred and trained for the bloody chaos of battle, spooks. It is a sudden, violent sideways lurch, a movement for which your rigid steel-encased body is completely unprepared. You are not unseated. You are unbolted. You go sideways, a single solid 60-pound unit of surprised night, and you crash to the ground with a deafening gong-like clang that echoes across the entire city of Milan. The impact does not hurt. Your padded arming doublet and the sheer rigid strength of the steel have absorbed the shock completely. But the landing is not the problem. The problem is what comes next. You are lying on your back in the dust, and you have a single, clear, and profoundly terrifying thought. I can't get up. You try to sit up, but the great, curved weight of your breastplate and the helmet pull you back down. You are an overturned beetle, a helpless tortoise on its shell, waving your steel-clad limbs uselessly at the indifferent blue sky. You try to roll onto your side, but the smooth, curved plates of your armor offer no purchase on the dusty ground. You just slide, a pathetic, squeaking, and deeply undignified sound. Your magnificent, multi-village priced steel shell has instantly transformed from a fortress into a trap. This is the mainstream historical fact, the great Achilles' heel of the late medieval knight. Once unhorsed, particularly on soft or uneven ground, getting back to your feet was a slow, exhausting, and often impossible struggle. A quirky and brutal tidbit from the German fighting manuals of the era the Fechtbücher is that they contained entire sections dedicated to the art of ground fighting. showing in a series of grim illustrations how an unarmored foot soldier could easily dispatch a fallen knight by sitting on his chest, lifting his visor and inserting a long, thin dagger called a rondel into his eye slit. Historians still argue whether a fallen knight was more likely to be killed outright by a common soldier looking to settle a social score, or to be captured and held for a lucrative ransom by an enemy knight who recognized the high quality of his armor and the financial opportunity it represented. As you lie there, flailing in the dust, you sincerely hope that any approaching enemy is more of a businessman than a class warrior. Henry, your squire, is rushing to your side, his face a mask of panicked concern. He grabs your arm, but his grip can find no purchase on the smooth, polished steel. Getting you up is not a matter of a simple hand. It is a problem of leverage and engineering. He has to get his shoulder under your back, and with a great you are standing again, a dusty, disheveled, and deeply humbled monument to the laws of gravity. Your squire, Henry, fusses around you, brushing the pale Italian dust from the gleaming plates of your armor, his movements a mixture of panic deficiency and a deep, sincere pity. You have just experienced the single most terrifying and embarrassing vulnerability of your new, steel-plated life. The turtle on its back. The armor, your magnificent 60-pound fortress, has protected you completely from the impact of the fall. There is not a scratch on you. But it has also, for a few long, terrifying seconds, turned you into a helpless, flailing child. You are hoisted back into the saddle, the world once again a narrow, bouncing sliver in your helmet's eye slit. The feeling of invincibility has been replaced by a cold, nagging anxiety. But the tournament Malai, the great, chaotic free-for-all that is the main event of the day, is about to begin. You take your blunted tournament sword in your gaunted hand, a weapon designed for scoring points, not for killing. The trumpet sounds, a high, brazen call to licensed, socially sanctioned violence, and you charge. The world dissolves into a chaos of thundering hooves, splintering lances, and the deafening, percussive clang of steel on steel. You are a better rider than you are a walker, and in the saddle, locked into your high-backed war saddle, you are a thunderbolt. An opposing knight comes at you, his own sword a blur of silver. He strikes your shoulder, and the blow, which would have sheared through your old mail shirt, simply glances off the curved, polished plate of your pauldron with a loud, deeply satisfying scrong and a shower of bright sparks. He tries again, a desperate, hacking cut at your helmet. The blow lands with a great, gong-like boom that makes your ears ring and your vision swim for a second. But the thick, tempered steel of your dog-faced bassinet doesn't even dent. This is the great, undeniable advantage of plate. The mainstream historical fact is that a full suit of high-quality plate armor made a knight virtually immune to the cutting blows of a sword. The combination of the hard, smooth, and cleverly angled surfaces was designed to make a sword edge simply skate off without finding purchase. And now you are feeling the truth of that. You are untouchable. You are a god of steel. But your opponent is not a fool. He is an experienced fighter, and he understands the new and brutal physics of your age. He sees that his sword is as useless as a feather duster. He drops it, letting it dangle from the chain on his wrist, and from his saddle he unhooks his secondary weapon. It is not an elegant, chivalrous blade. It is a tool of pure, unadulterated, and deeply personal violence. It is a mace, a heavy, iron-headed club, its head flanged into a series of brutal, triangular ridges designed for one purpose and one purpose only, to crush. He comes at you again, not with the fencer's grace, but with the simple, direct, and deeply honest intention of hitting you very, very hard with a large, heavy object. He swings the mace in a wide, powerful arc, and you try to raise your shield to block it, but you are too slow. The mace head connects squarely with the center of your gleaming, beautiful, and catastrophically expensive breastplate. The sound is not a clang. It is a boom, a deep, deafening, and profoundly final sound, like the cracking of the world's largest bell, and you are inside it. The world vanishes in a flash of white, silent light. But it is the feeling that is the true revelation. A breastplate does not break. It does not shatter. It deforms. It bends. You feel a sudden, crushing, and impossible pressure on your chest, as if a giant has just tried to punch a hole through your very soul. The force of the blow, the pure, simple kinetic energy, is transferred from the mace head, through the denting steel, through your padded arming doublet, and is delivered with a brutal democratic efficiency, directly into your rib cage. The air is driven from your lungs in a single explosive gasp that you cannot even hear. You are not dead. You are not even bleeding. But you are completely, utterly, and instantly incapacitated. You slump forward in your saddle, the reins falling from your numb, buzzing gauntlets. Your entire world a single, searing, white-hot point of pain in your chest. The tournament, the other nights, the cheering crowd, it has all ceased to exist. This is the great, terrible truth of the arms race. As plate armor became better at defeating sharp things, weapons technology simply evolved to find a new way to hurt the man inside. Maces, war hammers, and poleaxes were the answer. Weapons designed not to cut, but to crush, to deliver massive concussive force that could break bones, rupture organs, and cause catastrophic internal bleeding right through the armor. Historians still argue how much of a knight has training focused on these anti-armor weapons versus the more traditional sword. A quirky and revealing tidbit from the autopsy of the skeleton of King Richard III, who died in your magnificent Milanese breastplate, now has a new and deeply personal feature. A large, star-shaped dent directly over your heart, a permanent, physical souvenir from your brief but educational argument with Newtonian physics. The tournament is over. You did not win. You did, however, gain 3 bruised ribs and a profound, intimate understanding of the phrase, blunt force trauma. For a week, every breath is a sharp, stabbing reminder that your beautiful steel shell is not a force field. It does not make the energy of a blow vanish. It just spreads it out, turning a sharp, fatal wound into a deep, agonizing, and spectacular bruise. The season's turn. The playful, if brutal, violence of the tournament has been replaced by the grim, dirty business of a real war. You are no longer in sunny Italy, but back in the damp gray and perpetually drizzling landscape of northern France, engaged in one of the endless muddy and deeply personal squabbles between the English and the French that will one day be called the 100 Years' War. You are Sir Thomas, a veteran now, and you are laying siege to a small, stubborn, and very well-defended French castle. The castle is surrounded by a wide, green, and deceptively peaceful-looking moat. The water is stagnant, choked with algae, and probably home to a dozen different kinds of medieval waterborne disease. But it is deep, and it is the castle's greatest and most effective defense. For a week, you have been engaged in a furious, bloody battle for control of the single narrow stone bridge that leads to the main gatehouse. And today, you are making the final push. The world is a nightmare of noise and chaos. The air is thick with the smoke of burning tar, the twang of crossbows, and the screams of men. You are on foot, your horse useless in the tight confines of the bridge. You are part of a shield wall, a slow-moving, clanking wall of steel and desperation, trying to advance against a hail of arrows and rocks being dropped from the battlements above. Your beautiful dog-faced helmet is a prison of noise, your own ragged breathing a roaring wind in your ears. You are fighting beside another English knight, a big, boisterous man named Sir Reginald, his armor even more ornate and expensive than your own. He is a force of nature, his great warhammer a blur of destructive energy, and he is laughing, a great booming sound that is barely audible over the din of battle. He is a man who truly, deeply loves his job. He takes a step onto a section of the bridge where a great stone from a catapult has shattered the parapet. He is exposed, a single gleaming figure against the green water of the moat below. A French man-at-arms, a common soldier with a long, heavy poleaxe, sees his chance. He does not try to cut Sir Reginald. He does not try to smash his armor. He does something far simpler and far more brilliant. He hooks the back of the axe head around Reginald's ankle and pulls. It is a simple, almost childishly simple trick. The great, laughing knight, for all his strength and all his steel, is caught completely off balance. His arms pinwheel for a terrifying, silent moment. He is a statue of polished steel, poised on the edge of the world. And then he falls. It is not a dramatic, screaming plunge. It is a quiet, heavy, and shockingly fast descent. The water does not embrace him. It swallows him. There is a great, surprisingly quiet splash, a geyser of green, murky water, and then nothing. For a second, you see a flurry of bubbles, a brief, frantic, and completely silent struggle just beneath the surface. And then, even that is gone. The moat is still again, its green, placid surface marred only by a series of slow spreading ripples. Sir Reginald is gone. This is the great, terrible, and often overlooked enemy of the knight in armor, water. The mainstream historical fact is that the sheer, dead weight of the armor, a good 60 to 70 pounds of steel, made swimming an absolute impossibility. A knight who fell into any body of water deeper than his own neck was, for all intents and purposes, a dead man. Battles fought on bridges, near rivers, or on marshy ground often saw more knights die from drowning than from enemy weapons. The infamous mud of the Battle of Agincourt would become a graveyard for hundreds of French knights, their heavy armor turning a sodden field into a death trap. He's a walking anchor, and he has just found his harbor at the bottom of a very muddy moat. You and the other knights can only stare in helpless horror. There is no rescue. There is no heroic dive to save him. He sank like a dropped set of car keys. A quirky and rather grim tidbit from some chronicles, the death of Sir Reginald is a cold, silent, and deeply unsettling event. His magnificent, expensive armor, his loud, boisterous laughter, his very existence, all of it has been extinguished, not by a heroic sword stroke, but by a simple, muddy moat. The jeering laughter from the French defenders on the battlements is a harsh, grating sound that cuts through the din of battle. They have just proven, in the most brutal and efficient way possible, that the new steel-plated god of the battlefield has a very simple and very exploitable weakness. He cannot swim. The momentary pause, the collective, horrified intake of breath from your fellow knights is over. The battle for the bridge resumes its furious, grinding, and deeply personal rhythm. You are a slow-moving wall of steel, and the French are a determined and very well-positioned wall of stone. The air is a thick, whining soup of projectiles. Arrows from longbows arc high over the walls, clattering harmlessly against your polished steel plates. Rocks, dropped by hand from the battlements above, crash against your helmet with a deafening, bell-like gong that makes your teeth rattle and your vision swim. But your armor holds. It is doing its job. It is a fortress, and you are its small, sweaty, and increasingly miserable inhabitant. You are in the front rank, your heavy shield locked with the men beside you, your sword a short, heavy tool for the close, brutal stabbing work of breaking a shield wall. And then, through the narrow, letterbox-shaped ice-slit of your helmet, you see him. He is on the battlement directly above the gatehouse, a position of almost perfect safety. He is not a knight. He is a common soldier, a man-at-arms, and he is not holding a bow. He is holding the devil's own invention, a crossbow. It is a vicious, mechanical-looking thing, its heavy wooden stock braced against the stone crenellation, its short, powerful bow of laminated wood, and sinew held taut not by the strength of a man's arm, but by the relentless, unforgiving power of a winding crank. It is a machine designed to kill knights. It requires almost no training, no great strength, just a steady hand and a cold heart. And the man holding this one has both. You watch in a strange, slow-motion bubble of detached horror as he finishes cranking the winch, locks the thick steel string into place, and lays a short, thick, iron-headed arrow into the groove. It is not an arrow designed for flight, for distance, for elegance. It is a bolt. It is short, heavy, and tipped with a narrow, four-sided, armor-piercing point called a bodkin. It is not a feather. It is a nail. A nail that he is about to try and hammer into your chest. He raises the crossbow. You can't see his eyes, but you can feel his gaze as he aims, not at your head, not at your limbs, but at the great, solid, and supposedly invulnerable expanse of your polished Milanese breastplate, the very plate that still bears the star-shaped dent from your unfortunate encounter with the mace. For a split second, a flicker of your old, arrogant confidence returns. This is the finest steel money can buy. It has shrugged off sword cuts and glanced away arrows. It will hold. The crossbowman fires. There is no gentle twang of a bowstring. There is a single explosive and deeply violent THWACK, a sound like a giant snapping a dry branch, the sound of a massive amount of potential energy being instantly converted into a single focused point of kinetic fury. And for a fraction of a second, you can see the bolt in the air, a dark, blurry line, impossibly fast, impossibly straight. The impact is not a clang. It is not a boom. It is a single, sharp, and utterly final punch. You are not hit. You are struck, as if by an invisible giant's fist. The 60 pounds of steel you are wearing is thrown backward with a force that is simply unbelievable. Your feet leave the ground. The world vanishes in a flash of white, silent light, and you crash onto the stone bridge on your back, another helpless, overturned turtle. But this is not the clumsy, embarrassing fall of the training yard. This is a new and terrible kind of pain. It is not the deep, crushing ache of the mace. It is a sharp, searing, and impossibly focused point of pure, white-hot agony in the center of your chest. You lie on the bridge, the world a muffled, distant roar, your own ragged, gasping breaths, a roaring wind in your helmet. You are alive, but you are broken. This is the mainstream historical fact that signaled the beginning of the end for your kind. The high-powered crossbow, with its steel bow and crank mechanism, could generate a level of projectile energy that even the finest plate armor could not reliably defeat at close range. A quirky and revealing tidbit is that the weapon was considered so deadly, so unchivalrous, that the Second Lateran Council in 1139, under Pope Innocent II, famously tried to ban its use against Christians, declaring it a weapon hateful to God and unfit for Christians. The ban was, of course, a spectacular failure. The genie of military technology was out of the bottle, and it was not going back in. Henry, your loyal squire, and another man-at-arms drag you, a dead weight of groaning steel, out of the chaos and to the relative safety of your own lines. They lay you on the muddy ground, and after a struggle with the straps, they remove your helmet. You gasp in the cool, smoky air, your chest a single unified scream of pain. Henry unbuckles your breastplate, and you both stare in silent, horrified disbelief. There, in the center of the beautiful, you are a man of leisure, a status you have achieved through the deeply unpleasant method of getting a small, neat hole punched in your chest by a crossbow. The siege has ground to a halt, a stalemate of mud and misery, and you have been granted a period of convalescence in the relative comfort of your campaign tent. Your magnificent and now slightly perforated breastplate is at the armorer's tent, a place of frantic, clanging activity where a master craftsman is attempting to hammer the dent out and patch the hole, a process that involves a lot of heat, a lot of swearing, and a bill that will make your eyes water all over again. But the rest of your armor is with you. And as you lie on your cot, your ribs a symphony of dull, throbbing aches, you are forced to confront the great, silent, and most persistent enemy of your kind. It is not the French. It is not the crossbow. It is the rust. The air in northern France is not the dry, clean air of Milan. It is a thick, damp, and deeply corrosive soup. Every morning, a fine mist rolls in from the sea, and every piece of metal you own greets it with a faint but undeniable blush of orange red. Rust, the slow, silent, and deeply unflattering cancer of iron, is a constant and unwinnable war. And your beautiful, impossibly expensive suit of plate armor is its favorite meal. Your squire, Henry, is not learning the noble art of the lance today. He is on his knees on a piece of oilcloth, engaged in the most tedious, unglamorous, and absolutely essential task of a squire's life. He is fighting the rust. It is a full-time job for him, a position that is less warrior in training and more specialist in aggressive exfoliation for steel. He has a collection of tools laid out beside him. There is a block of fine-grained sandstone, a bundle of coarse wool, a pot of thick, greasy tallow, and a jug of sour, acidic wine. You watch him as he works on your gauntlets, those beautiful, articulated steel gloves. A fine orange patina has begun to form in the intricate joints between the finger plates. He dips a rag in the sour wine. The acid helps to dissolve the worst of the corrosion and then begins to scrub. His movements a slow, circular, and deeply patient rhythm. After the acid has done its work, he takes a slurry of fine sand and oil and begins to polish, rubbing and rubbing until the dull orange stain is replaced by the familiar gleaming silver of the steel. It is a process that requires the patience of a saint and the elbows of a blacksmith. This is the mainstream historical fact that governed the daily life of every man who wore armor. Steel, particularly the high-carbon steel needed for good armor, is incredibly susceptible to rust. A suit that was neglected, especially in a damp climate like England or France, could be rendered not just ugly, but dangerously weak in a matter of weeks, its plates thinned, its rivets weakened, its very integrity compromised. Your old suit of mail, you remember, was a particular nightmare, a writhing nest of 50,000 tiny, rust-prone rings. A quirky and rather clever tidbit of mail maintenance involved a technique called tumbling. This entire mail shirt would be placed in a wooden barrel half filled with sand and leather scraps. The barrel would then be sealed and rolled around for hours, the abrasive action of the sand polishing the rust from every single ring. It was the world's first and most low-tech rock tumbler, and it was still a profoundly tedious business. Plate armor, with its large, smooth surfaces, is easier to polish, but its intricate joints and hidden crevices are a paradise for an ambitious patch of corrosion. Historians and metallurgists still argue whether the master armorers of Milan and Germany had secret, closely guarded techniques for producing a more rust-resistant form of steel, perhaps through a specific quenching process or the addition of trace elements to the alloy, or if the battle against corrosion was a universal and democratic misery for all knights, regardless of their armor's price tag. Henry finishes the gauntlet and moves on to a greave, his movements a slow, practiced, and deeply resentful-looking ballet. The final step, you know, will be to coat every single plate, every rivet, and every squeaking hinge in a thin, protective layer of oil or tallow, making you not only shiny, but also incredibly slippery, and leaving you with a faint but persistent scent of a badly dressed salad. You are a high-maintenance piece of military hardware. You are a walking, talking, and profoundly demanding classic car that requires constant, obsessive, and expensive upkeep to prevent it from dissolving back into the earth. You look at your squire, his hands black with oil and rust, and you realize that your greatest and most enduring battle is not being fought on the bridge or in the tournament lists. It is being fought right here, on this small patch of oilcloth, a slow, quiet, and never-ending war against the very air you breathe. The war, like all wars, has ended, not with a glorious victory, but with a series of long, tedious, and profoundly unsatisfying treaties. You are older now, your face a roadmap of old scars and new wrinkles, your body a collection of aches and pains, each one a souvenir from a specific battle or a particularly ill-advised fall from a horse. The hole in your breastplate has been patched, a small, ugly rivet-studded scar that mirrors the one in your memory. You are Sir Thomas, a veteran, a man of some renown, and you have survived. And your reward for surviving the brutal, muddy reality of war is to be invited to participate in its clean, glorious, and infinitely more ridiculous theatrical cousin, the tournament. But this is not the chaotic, free-for-all Mali of your youth. The tournament has evolved. It has become a great, formal, and fantastically expensive spectacle, a kind of high society sport for men whose primary skill is hitting other men with very long sticks. The central event is no longer the mock battle, but the joust, the highly ritualized, one-on-one passage of arms. And for this new, more specialized sport, you need a new, more specialized suit of armor. You are back in a master armorer's workshop, this time in Augsburg, Germany, another great center of the steel-shaping arts. And the thing they are building around you is not armor. It is a vehicle. A single-occupant, custom-fitted, and almost completely immobile piece of jousting hardware. It is a German Stechug, and it is a masterpiece of beautiful, glorious, and profoundly stupid engineering. If your Milanese battle harness was a fortress, this is a bank vault. It is heavier, thicker, and far less concerned with trivial matters like, for example, walking. Your squire, a new boy, as Henry is now a knight himself, is aided by two of the armorer's burly apprentices. Getting you dressed is no longer a matter of strapping and buckling. It is a matter of bolting and wrenching. You are being assembled. The breastplate is a great, thick, curving slab of steel, almost an inch thick over your heart, and it is completely rigid. Bolted directly to it is a great steel plate, the targe. That covers the left side of your chest and throat, the primary target area. Your left arm, the one that will hold the shield, is almost completely encased in a series of massive overlapping plates, culminating in a great, shell-like elbow guard and a gauntlet that is permanently fixed in a gripping position. It's less a piece of armor and more a piece of pre-sculpted wearable architecture. The right arm, by contrast, is lighter, more articulated, to allow you to control the lance. And then comes the helmet. It is a great frogmouth helm, a bizarre and beautiful piece of metalwork that looks less like a helmet and more like the front end of a very strange, very angry steel bird. It has no movable visor. It is a single solid piece of steel that is bolted directly to your breastplate and backplate. Once it is on, you cannot turn your head. You cannot even nod. You are looking in one direction, and one direction only, forward, and your view is a single tiny horizontal slit, no wider than your thumb, cut just above the mouth of the helm. It's like trying to navigate the world by looking through a mail slot that you are wearing on your face. This is the mainstream historical fact that gave birth to the great myth of the clumsy, immobile knight. This specialized tournament armor, particularly the Stechug, could weigh up to 100 pounds, almost double the weight of your battle harness. It was so heavy and so rigid that walking was virtually impossible, and a knight often had to be winched or lifted by a crane onto his horse. But this was not battle armor. It was safety equipment for an extreme sport. It's the difference between the gear a soldier wears and the fireproof suit a Formula One driver is zipped into. You wouldn't wear a racing suit to go grocery shopping. The final bolts are tightened with a squeal of metal on metal. You are encased. The world is a dark, muffled, and incredibly heavy place. You try to take a step, and you can't. Your legs, encased in their own rigid steel tubes, can barely bend. You are a statue, a very expensive, very sweaty, and very, very annoyed statue. Historians still argue whether the late medieval tournament was primarily a form of military training, a war game that kept knights' skills sharp for real combat, or if it had evolved into a purely social spectacle, a kind of violent, aristocratic sport with its own specialized athletes, equipment, and a rulebook that had little to do with the messy reality of the battlefield. As you stand there, unable to even walk to the door, you are strongly in favor of the violent sport theory. A quirky and revealing tidbit about the joust was its complex scoring system. You would get a certain number of points for breaking your lance on your opponent's targe, more points for breaking it on his helmet, and the ultimate glory was to unhorse him completely. The armor was designed as much to present a good, solid, point-scoring target as it was to protect the man inside. You are a walking, or rather, a non-walking scoreboard. It is time. 2 burly apprentices, one on each side, take your arms, and with a great, coordinated grunt, they half-walk, half-drag you out of the workshop and to the waiting crane. You are hooked into a harness, and with a groan of ropes and pulleys, you are unceremoniously hoisted into the air, and then lowered with a final jarring clang into the saddle of your waiting warhorse. The bolts are removed. The crane swings away. You are in your gilded cage, ready for the most dangerous and most ridiculous 10 seconds of your life. The glorious, ridiculous, and nearly fatal experience of the tournament is behind you. Your magnificent German-engineered jousting armor, the Stetschube, has been carefully disassembled, cleaned, oiled, and packed away in a great, velvet-lined wooden chest. It is a piece of high-performance sporting equipment, as useless for a real battle as a racehorse is for pulling a plow. You have returned to your own drafty castle, to your life as a landed knight, a lord of a small and mostly unremarkable patch of England, and you have brought your beautiful, dented, and catastrophically expensive Milanese battle harness with you. You are no longer a young squire, nor a knight on campaign. You are a figure of authority, a local power, and you learn, in the quiet, mundane reality of your daily life, the final, and most profound, complaint about your armor. You are almost never allowed to take it off. Not in public, at least. It is a feast day. You are in the great hall of your own castle, a smoky, torch-lit space that smells of roasted meat, spilled ale, and damp dogs. You are presiding over the high table, a position of honor and responsibility, and you are wearing your full plate harness. Not the great, immobilizing jousting helm, but a lighter, open-faced sallet. Not the heavy, articulated gauntlets, but you are in your breastplate, your backplate, your arm and leg armor. You are, from the neck down, a man of steel, and you are profoundly, deeply, and sweatily uncomfortable. You are not expecting a battle. You are expecting a haunch of venison. But to appear at your own high table on a feast day in simple robes would be a sign of weakness, of a lack of status. Your armor, you have come to realize, is not just a tool for war. It is your uniform. It is your business suit. It is a declaration of your social standing, a physical, clanking, and deeply uncomfortable manifestation of your place at the top of the great feudal pyramid. You watch the people in your hall. The peasants, your tenants, who have been allowed in for the feast, stand near the back, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. To them, you are not just their lord, Thomas. You are the knight, a creature of a different species, a man made of metal, a walking, talking symbol of the power that governs their lives. Your armor is a wall between your world and theirs. The lesser gentry, the local squires and minor landowners who sit at the lower tables, look at you with a different kind of eye. They are not awestruck. They are appraising. They are looking at the quality of your armor, noting the Milanese craftsmanship, the elegant, fluted lines, the sheer, undeniable expense of it all. Your armor is a financial statement, a credit report rendered in polished steel. It tells them your worth, your status, your importance. This is the mainstream historical fact of late medieval chivalry. Armor was the ultimate status symbol, the single most expensive and visible way for a nobleman to display his wealth and power. You try to eat. The simple act of lifting a piece of bread to your mouth is a clumsy, noisy affair. Your steel-clad elbow clicks and squeaks, and you have to move your entire torso to reach for the wine goblet. A quirky and revealing tidbit from the era comes in the form of sumptuary laws, regulations that dictated who was allowed to wear what. While most of these laws focused on the length of your pointy shoes or the type of fur you could wear, some extended to armor, restricting the use of certain expensive decorative elements like gold inlay or elaborate etching to the highest ranks of the nobility. Your armor was, quite literally, a legally regulated part of your identity. It was your personal brand, and you had to make sure it was on message at all times. You feel a familiar, trickling sensation down your back. Even here, in the drafty, cool great hall, the combination of the roaring fire and the press of bodies has turned your arming doublet into a familiar, personal swamp. You are sweating into a garment that costs more than the entire village it is supposed to protect. Historians still argue how much the evolution of late medieval plate armor was driven by the practical demands of an evolving battlefield, and how much was driven by this social pressure, this arms race of fashion and status that played out in the tournament lists and the feasting halls. Was that new, fluted style on your pauldrons a genuine defensive innovation, or was it just the medieval equivalent of a new spoiler on a sports car, a flashy, expensive, and largely useless statement of conspicuous consumption? You look down at your gleaming, steel-encased hands. This armor is a paradox. It is a tool of immense power, and it is a prison of immense discomfort. It is your shield, and it is your burden. It is the source of your authority, and it is a constant physical reminder of the crushing weight of that authority. It is not just the weight of the steel that you carry. It is the psychological weight of being the knight, the symbol, the man of iron. You are a walking, talking, the feasting hall, with its smoky torches and its draughts of cold English air, is a distant, almost luxurious memory. The psychological weight of your armor, the subtle, clanking language of status and power, has been brutally, unceremoniously replaced by a far more primitive and all-consuming reality. The simple physical weight of it under a sun that has no mercy. You have taken the cross. You are Sir Thomas, a crusader, and you have sailed across the great sea to the Holy Land to reclaim Jerusalem for Christendom. And you are beginning to suspect that this may have been a terrible, terrible mistake in judgment. You are on the march, part of a great, clanking, and profoundly sweaty river of European chivalry, flowing through the dusty, rock-strewn hills of Palestine. And it is hot. It is a kind of heat you did not know existed. It is not the gentle, occasional warmth of an English summer. It is a dry, baking, and deeply personal heat, a physical assault from a sun that hangs in the pale, cloudless sky like a great, white furnace door. The air does not move. It is a solid, shimmering block of heat that you are forced to wade through with every single agonizing step. And you are wearing your oven, your beautiful 60-pound Milanese steel personal sauna. The gleaming, polished plates of your armor, which looked so magnificent in the soft, gray light of the north, are now a perfect, parabolic mirror, collecting and focusing the sun's rays and directing them with a brutal efficiency directly into your body. You are not just a man in a hot suit of armor. You are a man who is being actively and very efficiently barbecued from the inside out. Your personal brand is now Night Kebab. The padded arming doublet your old familiar tormentor, has achieved a new and transcendent level of misery. It is no longer a damp sponge. It is a boiling, sodden mass of quilted linen and horsehair, a poultice of pure 12th century suffering. The sweat pours from your body in rivers, but it offers no relief. It simply soaks into the padding, where it is heated by the sun-baked steel, turning your entire torso into a low-grade steam bath. This is the mainstream historical fact that defined the Crusades. For the heavily armored European knights, the greatest and most relentless enemy was not the Saracen warrior. It was the climate. Heat stroke, dehydration, and a host of heat-related illnesses were the primary cause of casualties on almost every campaign. The armor that was so perfectly adapted for the cool, damp forests of France was a death trap in the deserts of the Levant. You look at your fellow knights, a shuffling, clanking line of misery. Their colorful linen surcoats, the proud displays of their heraldry, are dark with sweat and caked with a fine, pale dust. These surcoats, you now realize, are not just for show. They are a critical, if deeply inadequate, piece of thermal engineering, a thin, fabric shield that is the only thing preventing the steel from becoming hot enough to cook on. A quirky and desperate tidbit of Crusader life involved the frantic search for ways to adapt. Some knights would abandon their heavy, closed-faced helms for lighter, open-faced helmets with a simple nasal guard, trading protection for a gasp of precious air. Others would line their helmets with water-soaked cloths, a temporary, steaming reprieve that was better than nothing. Your own helmet is a torture chamber. A narrow eye slit is a tiny window into a world that is bleached of all color by the glare. The air inside is a recycled, superheated fog of your own breath, and the steel is so hot you can feel the warmth through the thick, padded lining. You are beginning to feel dizzy, your vision swimming, the first telltale signs of heat exhaustion. Historians still argue whether the consistent and often catastrophic defeats of Crusader armies in open field battles were due more to their tactical inflexibility and their stubborn reliance on the heavy cavalry charge, or to the simple, brutal fact that their greatest military asset, the heavily armored knight, had a functional combat lifespan of about 15 minutes before he started to collapse from heat stroke. You see a knight ahead of you stumble. He does not fall. He simply stops. He stands for a moment, a great, gleaming statue in the dust, and then, with a slow, almost graceful crumple, he collapses in a heap, his armor clanging with a sound of final, metallic finality. Two squires rush to his side, their faces a mask of panic. They struggle to unbuckle his helmet, to give him air, to pour the last of their precious water over his face. You just keep walking. There is nothing you can do. The herd must move on. You are a walking, talking, and profoundly uncomfortable symbol of a military doctrine that has met its match, not in a new weapon, but in a simple, undeniable, and very, very hot fact of geography. You are the wrong tool, for the wrong job, in the wrong country, and you are very, very far from home. The brutal, sun-scorched lesson of the Holy Land is a distant, searing memory, a story you now tell to the wide-eyed squires in your own great hall on cold, rainy nights. The world has turned again. You are Sir Thomas, an old man now, your hair a thin silver-white fringe around the edges of your leather arming cap. Your body is a creaking, groaning museum of old injuries, each one a souvenir from a different battle, a different tournament, a different argument with gravity. But you are here. You have survived, and you have been called to fight one last time. The year is 1453. You are in France, at the Battle of Castellon, one of the final, bloody punctuation marks on the century-long sentence of the 100 Years' War. The world is a familiar, if deeply unpleasant, shade of mud. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth, of nervous horses, and of the inevitable impending rain. You sit astride your great warhorse, a magnificent, living mountain of muscle and controlled power, and you feel the familiar, comforting weight of your steel skin. It is an old suit now, your Milanese masterpiece, its surface a fine web of scratches and small, honorable dents, each one a story. It is an old friend, and you are about to go into business together one last time. Your side is confident. The French have dug in, a defensive line of archers and men-at-arms, but you are the hammer. A great, glittering wave of English heavy cavalry, 1,000 walking castles of steel, ready to charge and break their line, as you have done 100 times before. You look at the French position, and you see something strange. In front of their main line, they have arranged a series of what look like heavy wooden carts, their sides reinforced with earth and timber. It's an unusual, but not unheard of, defensive tactic. You are not concerned. You are a thunderbolt. A wooden cart is not going to stop you. The trumpets sound, a high, brazen, and beautiful call to violence. The great, clanking, creaking wave of chivalry begins to move, first a walk, then a trot, then a ground-shaking canter. The world dissolves into a familiar, exhilarating chaos of thundering hooves, of the snapping of your own colorful banner in the wind, of the roar of 1,000 throats shouting your battle cry. This is your world. This is your art form. This is what you were born to do. And then you hear it. A new sound. A sound that does not belong in your world. It is not the familiar high-pitched twang of a longbow, nor the violent, mechanical thwack of a crossbow. It is a sound that is both a crack and a boom all at once, a series of deep, percussive, and profoundly unnatural explosions that roll across the battlefield like a sudden, localized thunderstorm. It is a sound of pure, chemical fury, and with the sound comes a great, billowing cloud of thick, white, and acrid-smelling smoke erupting from the line of wooden carts. For a moment, you are simply confused. Is it some kind of new, loud, and very smoky firework? A strange theatrical trick to spook the horses? Then you see the knight to your right, a young, arrogant lordling in a brand new, and ridiculously expensive, suit of German fluted plate simply cease to exist. He does not fall. He is thrown from his horse, his body flying backward as if kicked by an invisible giant's foot. His magnificent fluted breastplate has a new, small, and perfectly circular hole in it, a black, smoking mouth from which a dark, unbelievable stain is beginning to spread. This is the mainstream historical fact of the Battle of Castellon. It was one of the first major European battles where field artillery and handheld firearms played a decisive, battle-winning role. The French, under the brilliant Jean Bureau, had assembled a park of over 300 cannons and hand cannons, and they had turned their defensive line into a fortress of gunpowder. You are not charging a line of men. You are charging a line of explosions. From the gaps in the wooden carts, you can see them. Lines of common soldiers, their faces grim and blackened with soot. They are not holding bows. They are holding heavy, awkward-looking iron tubes mounted on rough wooden stocks. They are hand cannons, the crude, violent ancestors of the musket. They are ugly, they are slow, they are wildly inaccurate, and they are killing you. It's the kind of ugly, mass-produced weapon that gives a craftsman like Master Giovanni nightmares. The charge falters. Horses, terrified by the noise and the smoke, rear and bolt. Knights, their armor proof. The war is a memory, a collection of loud, sharp, and painful stories you tell your grandchildren, who listen with a mixture of boredom and polite disbelief. The thunder of the French cannons at Castellon was the closing of a door, and you were one of the last men to stumble through it before it shut for good. You are Sir Thomas, an old man, your hair as white as a winter frost, your body a creaking, groaning archive of a forgotten way of life. Your home is your drafty English castle, and your days are a quiet, peaceful, and profoundly unarmored affair. In the corner of your solar, the sunlit room where you now spend most of your days, it stands. Your armor. It is mounted on a heavy oak mannequin, a silent, headless guest who never leaves. It is no longer a tool of your trade. It is a monument to it. It is your beautiful, uncomfortable, and deeply personal ghost. Sometimes, when the firelight catches the polished steel just right, you can almost see the man you used to be, trapped inside. You get up from your chair, your old bones protesting with a symphony of clicks and groans, and you walk to it. You run a hand, its skin as thin and dry as old parchment, over the cool, smooth metal of the breastplate. Your finger traces the faint, star-shaped outline of the dent from the mace, a lesson in blunt force trauma from a lifetime ago. You touch the small, ugly, riveted patch where the crossbow bolt punched a hole in your invincibility, a sharp, searing lesson in the relentless march of progress. Each scar on the steel is a scar on your memory. You remember the complaints? Oh, you remember them all. You remember the suffocating, claustrophobic heat, the feeling of being slowly cooked alive in your own sweat. You remember the constant, grinding chafe, the angry red sores in your armpits and the backs of your knees. You remember the noise, the incessant, betraying jangle of the mail, the squeak and click of the plate. You remember the sheer, crushing weight of it all. And as you stand here, in the quiet of your own warm room, a strange and deeply unexpected feeling washes over you. Nostalgia. You miss it. You miss the misery. Because the misery was the price of admission. The discomfort was the constant physical proof that you were a knight, a member of a sacred and terrible brotherhood. The complaints were the secret handshake, the shared, universal language of your kind. Your armor is a relic now. The mainstream historical fact is that by the end of your life in the late 15th century, armor like this has largely transitioned from a practical tool of the battlefield to a ceremonial object, a symbol of noble lineage worn in parades and portraits. A quirky and fascinating tidbit of this final theatrical phase of armor is the rise of the grotesque style, particularly in Germany, where helmets were forged into the shape of monstrous scowling faces complete with metal mustaches and sneers, a final flamboyant and slightly ridiculous gasp of a dying art form. Historians still argue whether this final ornate flourishing of plate armor was a confident last expression of aristocratic power and chivalric identity or the desperate, beautifully decorated death rattle of a military technology that already knew it was obsolete in the face of gunpowder. You look at your own, comparatively simple, battle-worn suit. Your grandson, a boy of 16 who is more interested in the new printed books from London than in the art of the lance, sometimes dares to wear the great, dog-faced helmet, running through the great hall, making muffled monster noises.